Let me know if you can see the recording notification.
Yeah, yep, I see. I can see it on my screen. So it says pause. So
All right, we're good to go.
set.
Yep.
All right. Well, all right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us for part one of our webinar, a free webinar series. This is leveraging your website with SEO. So I'm Joel Berrocan. I'm the National Director of Small Business Development with the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce. So our organization, just to give you a little bit of a background, we are started in 2009. We're based out of Washington, D.C. and San Juan. And basically what we do is we were created to support small businesses in the US mainland and in NPR. We look to be that bridge that connects those two distinct ecosystems. One of the ways we help and support small businesses is through webinars and workshops such as these. So in the past couple months, these have become a big priority for us. So what you're going to see in the coming months is a lot more things like this that we're going to offer in various topics and verticals. So stay tuned to our website, our social media channels for that. Our part two of the series will be this upcoming Thursday. So that'll get out there. So be sure to register for that one as well. A lot of great stuff that we'll be discussing in that webinar as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce one of the chamber's partners is Homebase. So I'll let Axel, who's the founder of Homebase, I'll let him talk a little bit about his platform, and then we'll get started with the presentation. So take it away, Axel.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Giancarlos and Joel, for having me here. I think what you guys are doing is awesome for the community and provides a lot of value. Over here at Homebase, our mission is aligns with what the NPR Chamber is doing, in the sense that we want to help Puerto Rican-owned businesses connect with the Puerto Rican diaspora, whether it be helping them find customers that are searching for Puerto Rican products or Puerto Rican-owned businesses. We basically allow a platform for people to find your business via Homebase. One of the things we worked on pretty heavily over the Christmas period, we had a ton of success helping different artisans who created Puerto Rican ornaments. And through our platform, a lot of people were able to find them. And they were pretty unique ornaments, which was pretty neat. And another success story we recently had is we helped a lot of people find pasteles, which if you live in the States and you're Puerto Rican, you know, it can be pretty tough to find. So it's a nice way to find stuff that you're used to back home. So I encourage everyone to, if you have a Puerto Rican owned business and you want to you want to be searched by the Puerto Rican community, it's a good way to increase your internet exposure. And it just helps with reaching potential customers that might be interested in connecting with you. So yeah, I encourage everyone to check it out. It's gohomebase.app. And yeah, once again, I look forward to learning more about SEO. Giancarlo is an expert at SEO, so I'm sure you guys will learn a lot from him.
Absolutely, thank you. Axel, if you want to share the link to the website in the chat so everybody can get it. And then we'll allow about 10-15 minutes at the end of the presentation for Q&A. But besides that, Giancarlos, I'll let you introduce yourself and take it away from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Joel. Thanks, Axel. Welcome, everybody. And thank you for taking the time to join this part one of this two-part web seminar. Like Joel mentioned, I am Giancarlos Merced. I will be your host for the day, and I am an SEO specialist. Today, the presentation is titled Leveraging Your Website with SEO. But before continuing, I'd like to give special thanks to the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce, specifically to Joel, mainly because Joel, it's funny, Joel reached out to us, me and other experts, including Axel, with this idea to put together this presentation for part one of the two parts web seminar. And he's just the one that's been working really hard and trying to find people that would be kind of interested in learning about SEO, how it can help their business, and yeah, this is amazing. So I am very thankful for those of you that have joined us, and we have an agenda. You can see it on your screen. I can't see the chat for some reason. I don't use Zoom often, so I apologize if you guys have any questions throughout the presentation. So if you do have any questions, I would suggest to hold off until the Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and I'll be sure to do my best to answer as much as I can. So moving on, the agenda for today is obviously, what is SEO? We're going to define what is search engine optimization. Then we're going to learn through a short 3-minute video created by Google about search, right? What is search? How does search works? How does Google search work? Then we're going to move on to the 4 pillars of SEO. And afterwards, SEO tools, how you can implement these SEO strategies and techniques. And I'm going to be showing you guys throughout this presentation. And then we're going to have 5 ways SEO impacts your business. And then finally, some 2021 SEO trends. So in case you find this presentation interesting and you want to move forward with implementing SEO strategy, not just on your website, I'm going to be talking a little bit about some SEO on social media as well. This is something new that if you're very active on social media like Instagram, you'll notice that there were some updates, some very interesting updates that were made in the previous ramp up, if you will. So without further ado, let's get started. Before moving on, a little bit about me. That's me. I am born and raised in Puerto Rico until the age of 18 years old, until I transferred to Syracuse University in Syracuse, New York. There I studied international relations, which has nothing to do with SEO, but the research component of that major is what made me fall in love with SEO here further on. When I graduated in 2018, I returned to Puerto Rico and found a job with an amazing company called Ad Practitioners based in Dorado. Basically, Ad Practitioners is a publishing company that works with several digital properties that they own. And one of those properties that I used to work with is called Consumers Advocate. Their slogan is decisions made easy. So it's basically a research firm, although small, that caters to consumers with products and services in order to help them make better buying decisions. And the current property that I work with, if you're not familiar with, but I have shared it a lot on my social media, is called money.com or Money Magazine, which is one of the leading personal finance platforms in the US at the moment, with currently 25 million monthly readers. So that's a little bit of background and how I got into what it is, the interesting and ever evolving world of SEO. SEO, search engine optimizations. You're going to hear that word a lot, right? SEO, SEO, SEO. It's everywhere. It's the new, quote unquote, the new marketing trend. Well, I wouldn't call it a trend. SEO has been around since the early 90s, even somewhat the late 80s, but it's been getting a lot of traction now ever since obviously the pandemic hit. A lot of people have switched to or moved their business rather to the digital space. And those that have not, you have to. I certainly recommend learning a little bit, even just the surface of SEO, which is what we're going to do today. I'm not going to go too in depth with SEO because SEO can tend to be a little bit complicated. But as you'll see throughout this presentation, there will be moments where I will just be or seem like I'm repeating the terms and the kind of a jargon, if you will, at times, mainly because everything in SEO overlaps, everything is connected. But in my opinion, SEO is basically a way of finding out what users or consumers want, right? How to best connect with those users with your content and what you have to offer, whether that is through products or services. But I have a quote here from an expert or a guru in the SEO industry called Brian Dean, who owns a SEO blog called Backlinko. He basically defines SEO as the practice of getting targeted traffic to a website from a search engine's organic rankings. So I want to give a short disclaimer here and mention that the SEO industry does have a lot of long words and long explanations. So I'll do my best to kind of slow down, but for the sake of time, we have under an hour, and I want to have enough time for Q&A if anyone has them. So please bear with me. Again, if you have any questions, please write them now, any notes, and I'll be more than happy to answer them as we move on to the Q&A session. So as Brian mentioned, it's a practice of targeting traffic to a website from a search engine's organic traffic. Keywords here are targeted traffic and organic rankings. Let me explain a little bit further. As you can see on the right side, you got a Google SERP, which is a search engine results page. On the right side of the Google logo, you'll see the search box, which we're all familiar with. If you own an iPhone or if you own a laptop, you'll notice that Google tends to be the default for most devices, specifically for iPhone, for web browsing. Inside the search box, you'll see the word keyword, which basically means that anything and everything that you type in the search box, not just on Google, right? It also includes Yahoo, Bing, DuckDuckGo, etc. Anything that you type in that search box is considered a keyword. Now, there's obviously different categories and different subcategories of keywords, but for the sake of this particular slide, I would just keep it there. Below the search box, you'll notice that there's kind of like a faded out search result, which is the paid section of Google. So whenever you research or search for any particular topic, you'll notice that the first 1 to 3 results, depending if they don't show images or videos, will probably be ads. This is people that engage in what we in the SEO world call pay-per-click, but that's not what SEO is in general. SEO is mainly about what is below those paid ads, which is the organic component of the search results displayed in the image below. Now, I'll move forward with explaining what is present in these search results, but I'll move along and explain why SEO is important. Search engines. To understand SEO, you need to understand search engines, particularly Google. Google owns around 86% of the market share of search engines, which is pretty interesting and also something that everybody needs to be aware of, right? SEO is, Google, excuse me, is the biggest player, but even though having said that, you still need to pay attention if you want to SEO for Yahoo, Bing, DuckDuckGo, etc. Although remember, these additional search engines are not the main or default search engines for most devices. It depends on your strategy, on your audience, on what you're trying to promote, either a service or a product. Depending on the search engine that you use, will also depend on will also grant you your success. So search engines. Next, we have the acronym EAT. And this is what I like to say somewhat of a controversial topic with the experts in the SEO industry, right? Mainly because the acronym is described as expertise, authority, and trust. Basically, whenever you write content, right, everybody considers you to be an expert on that particular topic, right? You're writing about it because you know something that those that are visiting your website don't. So that builds authority. Whenever you write about something that people don't know about and it provides them value, you establish yourself as an quote unquote expert in that particular field, which then when you add expertise and authority, you build trust. And that's what you want. You want your audience or your targeted audience to know and trust your work. So how do you build expertise and authority other than just writing about specific content or specific topics, right? Well, you can do this in a couple of ways. Number one, you can do this in interviewing experts. Let's say I'm doing an interview in a cupcake shop, right? And you're writing about cupcakes. So an expertise or an authority would be interviewing the business owner, right? Get a quote from that person. Put the quote in your content. Make sure it adds, it complements to your content. If you don't, then basically you're just speculating. You're just writing for the sake of writing. Although, this is the interesting part, if you have firsthand experience with, let's say, cupcake shops, let's say you scour the internet for cupcakes and you want to find which is the best cupcake shop in this example, Puerto Rico. So since you did the research, you obviously need to display that research that you did which then translates into firsthand experience that can translate into expertise and authority. Like I said, adding these two up develops trust. A funny statistic here is that Google and other search engines alike, but I'm going to focus on Google. Google has over 200 SEO ranking factors. We'll see this in the video in the upcoming slide. But these 200 factors that rank your website and basically is the component that displays the Google search results on whatever topic it is that you're searching for, is extremely important that you pay attention to what they are. Now, here's the sad part. Google doesn't necessarily mention what these 200 factors are, but given that SEOs, experts in this industry, love to do research or basically trial and error, A/B testing, they have found ways to kind of identify what these factors are. And I'll dabble a little bit into what these are as well further down this presentation. But in this next slide, I'll show you the video done by Google explaining a little bit about how search specifically for Google works.
Hi, my name is Matt Cutts. I'm an engineer in the quality group at Google, and I'd like to talk today about what happens when you do a web search. The first thing to understand is that when you do a Google search, you aren't actually searching the web. You're searching Google's index of the web, or at least as much of it as we can find. We do this with software programs called spiders. Spiders start by fetching a few web pages. Then they follow the links on those pages and fetch the pages they point to, and follow all the links on those pages and fetch the pages they link to, and so on, until we've indexed a pretty big chunk of the web, many billions of pages stored across thousands of machines. Now, suppose I want to know how fast a cheetah can run. I type in my search, say cheetah running speed, and hit return. Our software searches our index to find every page that includes those search terms. In this case, there are hundreds of thousands of possible results. How does Google decide which few documents I really want? By asking questions, more than 200 of them, like, how many times does this page contain your keywords? Do the words appear in the title, in the URL, directly adjacent? Does the page include synonyms for those words? Is this page from a quality website, or is it low quality, even spammy? What is this page's page rank? That's a formula invented by our founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, that rates a web page's importance by looking at how many outside links point to it and how important those links are. Finally, we combine all those factors together to produce each page's overall score and send you back your search results about half a second after you submit your search. At Google, we take our commitment to delivering useful and impartial search results very seriously. We don't ever accept payment to add a site to our index, update it more often, or improve its ranking. Let's take a look at my search results. Each entry includes a title, a URL, and a snippet of text to help me decide whether this page is what I'm looking for. I also see links to similar pages, Google's most recent stored version of that page, and related searches that I might want to try next. And sometimes, along the right and at the top, I'll see ads. We take our advertising business very seriously as well, both our commitment to deliver the best possible audience for advertisers and to strive to only show ads that you really want to see. We're very careful to distinguish your ads from regular search results. And we won't show you any ads at all if we can't find any that we think will help you find the information you're looking for, which in this case, the cheetah's top running speed is more than 60 miles an hour. Thanks for watching. I hope this made Google a little bit more understandable.
All right. So stay with me. I hope I hope that video didn't lose you, right? That was a lot of terminology. That was a lot of information. But having said that, we did hear some
interesting terminology that I really would like you guys to pay attention to, particularly PageRank and links, right? Google pays a lot of attention on links. And I'll be dabbing a little bit more about what that means, mainly because links are what I work with on a daily basis. So let's keep going. Now, I'm going to be talking about the 4 pillars of SEO. These are technical, which basically means how all your content can be crawled. You know those little spiders you saw in the video? That's the terminology we use for crawling content. And then indexing. So basically it crawls the content and then it extracts it into Google's or indexes it into its database. Next up, we have content. Content is king. I'm sure you heard of this, but it's basically having the most relevant and best answers to answer your audience's or your prospects' questions as best as you can. Next up, we have on-page or on-page SEO. This is technically what you can control in your website or basically on your web page or single web pages. So it's basically optimization of your content and some of the code included in it as well. And finally, my favorite, off-page. This is basically what I specialize in, and it's considered to be the hardest part of the SEO component that a lot of people tend to either quit or they just hire an expert, right? But mainly it is the most important part of SEO, which builds authority to ensure Google to stack the deck in your favor. But remember, you can't pay Google to increase your website's rankings, nor can you ask them to update their ranking factors, etc. So I'll be explaining a little bit about what each of these pillars mean and why are they important. Technical SEO. We'll start off with crawling and indexing. Basically, can search engines explore your site? You have to be sure anytime you have a website, if you have a website, to have the code on the back end, which is basically where the source code is of your website, to make it easier, not just for your audience to find your content, but also for these programs that Google built to scan and index your content and add it to its database. The harder you make this, the lower your ranking would probably be. Remember, everything in SEO, and you're going to hear this a lot, is it depends. So you have to be sure that what you're doing, or you can basically copy what other people have already done, meaning your competitors, just so you don't do the hard work because it's already done. Remember, you don't want to invent the wheel, you just want to make it better. Next up, we have mobile friendliness. Is your site quote unquote responsive? What does responsive mean? Basically, responsive is having your website be developed or created for mobile devices. In this case, there's a lot of people that obviously, as I'm doing right now, use their laptops to browse the web. But having said that, Google came out with an announcement last year where they mentioned that they're going to prioritize search results and rankings to mobile first indexing. So that means if your website is not built or adjusted for mobile responsiveness, you're going to be left behind. And those that have mobile responsiveness added to the website are going to move forward and are going to increase their rankings. So make sure this is done on your back end of your website. Next, we have site speed. Page load times are crucial. Remember, if a page doesn't load or takes longer than 3 seconds to load, 53% of visitors will leave your website. And when people leave your website, that does not just mean that they will visit again. It also sends a signal to Google indicating that, hey, this person visited this particular website and exited in less than 4 seconds. That's not a good signal. So it could devalue your rankings and upgrade those that do have quicker load times. But I'm going to give you some tips and tricks down the road in this presentation about how you can improve your page load time. Then finally, for technical SEO, we have URL structure. This basically means content hierarchy. I'm sure you've noticed anytime you visit a web page, on the URL on top of the browser, you see, for example, travelblog.com/cupcake interview, right? That sounds and looks way better than if you were to see travelblog.com slash just a bunch of numbers and letters, right? You can't identify and know what that particular URL is about. So people will tend to not trust content that has that particular URL structure. So make sure that when you're creating your content, you use your keywords in there. We're going to talk a little bit about that. You use your keywords in there, and also you make your URL structure readable. Content. Again, I'll keep mentioning this. Content is king, mainly because keywords need to match search intent. Search intent is basically the reason behind users' search. Now, there are 4 types of keyword intent. Number 1, navigational intent, and this is as simple as Facebook, YouTube, Amazon, or even bank account login. Number 2 is informational intent, which is basically acquire information and learn something about a product or service. So if you're offering a product or service, you have to make sure that you use keywords such as best cupcake shop in X or in Puerto Rico. It's informational. You're not selling people yet, but you're providing them information that will gather and get interest for those that have visited your webpage, to then eventually transition to what we call the third part, transactional keywords, or the transactional phase of web pages. Basically, transactional is an intermediate in between informational and commercial. We'll talk a little bit about commercial after transactional, but basically is when the user is ready to buy something, mainly a call to action. Subscribe to my newsletter, sign up for X offer, etc., etc. And finally, we have commercial, which is basically a type of buy now intent. This is basically what when you visit a web page, you see buy now, runs out in 10 minutes, lose out on this offer and you'll never see it again. That's type of a commercial type of intent, which has a lot of importance when you're trying to build content. So make sure that you identify what is the keyword search intent that you want to use whenever you're creating content. Next, we have images, high quality versus image size and load time. Well, this is kind of self-explanatory, right? You want to have high quality, not just high quality written content, but also high quality images. Usually, content that includes images in it tend to be more successful than content that do not. But there's a downside, right? High quality images are heavy, right? Whether they're in raw format or even JPEGs can be heavy, right? So you got to make sure that whenever you're uploading these high quality images, that they don't take long time to load. Remember, it takes only 3 seconds or more for people to get disinterested and leave your website. You don't want that. You want your page and your content to load as quick as possible. One way to do this is to compress your images. If you're using a Mac, not too familiar with PC, sorry, but if you use a Mac, you'll see that whenever you right click on an image, you can compress the file or even send it as a zip, which is what compressing does. Whenever you do that, you minimize what the size of that particular image is without compromising too much of its quality. But I would, ease on caution and make sure that either you hire an expert that knows about photo compression or image compression for the web, as even making the slightest change can have a lot of effect on your site and your content. Next up, we have statistics. People are drawn to numbers. They love numbers. They love research. It's what backs up fact checking, right? Misinformation. We don't want that. We want to make sure that people that are writing about something have the evidence and the methodologies to back it up. This can be done through case studies, through data, etc. But make sure that you at least provide some sort of statistics in your content to back up your arguments. And finally, for content, long form, all-encompassing style content. Just as a little tidbit, the average word count of pages on the first page of Google have over 1,800 words. Now, I know that's a lot, but still, it's something to keep in mind. I know everybody can't write or wants to write over 1,800 words for their content. Some of them don't even have to, right? They don't have enough content or reason to write 1,800 words in their page. But if you do, usually it has better results. Why? Well, as the description says, it's all encompassing, it's comprehensive. You cover all your bases. You don't leave anything up to interpretation. So people love that. If you're writing for example, I'm writing the ultimate guide about SEO, I'll literally write the ultimate guide. I'll write everything and anything that'll probably take me weeks, if not months, to build, including infographic and that sort of stuff, because people can actually skim through it. And even though they might not read everything about the ultimate guide, they'll probably find a section that they didn't know about that could provide them value, and they'll love it. So they'll keep spreading the word. The best marketing tactic, as I'm sure some of you are aware of, is word of mouth. So you have to be paying attention that the word of mouth is positive rather than negative. This is the organic component that I'm trying to get at. Next up, we got on-page SEO. Again, come back to keywords. I'm not going to go too much in detail, but you have to basically understand your target audience, build buyer personas, anticipate who your target audience is. Obviously, whenever you're starting a business, you need to do your market research and identify who would be interested in your content, in your products, in your services. But after having done that, you can still build who is your ideal audience, right? Your ideal prospect. And this is where keywords come into play. So be sure to pay attention, obviously, on the keyword intent and understanding your target audience. Descriptive URLs. This is similar to the URL structure or URL hierarchy. As the description displays, ensure each URL is simple. Page titles. I don't know if you saw it in the Google video, but basically page titles is the first thing that people see whenever they search something on Google. So you got to make sure that you include your keywords in a natural way on your content or on your page title. If you don't, it'll be kind of harder for people to want to click to your content because they don't see the keyword that they put on the Google search box on your page title. So keep that in mind. And finally, for on-page SEO, you got strong calls to action. Guide your audience. Make it easier for your audience to make an action, take an action, what to do next. People don't want to make an effort, right? People don't want to know, what am I supposed to do next? I read this amazing piece of content, but what do? Do I exit the page? Do I sign up for something? Do I read the next article? How do I do that? Make sure you build something within your content that shows them and guides them on what to do next. For example, you can do this on social media, right? If you share on social media your content, you'll probably have a call to action. If you like this content, make sure to share it with your followers, with your friends, families, your dog, who knows? But you have to make sure that you have a call to action. Now, we're off to off-page SEO. I hope I'm not losing you guys, but we're almost on the final stretch. Off-page SEO, like I mentioned, is the hardest part of SEO. But if done correctly, it can definitely help you out in the long run. We'll start off with, again, social media. Share your content. Whenever you publish something on your website, it's probably best to wait, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 days for you to publish and share your content on social media. Why is this? Well, there's a couple of things. Number one, whenever you share something on your website, you have to wait probably a couple of minutes, maybe an hour, for Google to analyze it and index it into its database. You don't want to share it on social media to then have it drive a lot of traffic without Google having indexed it, because if you do, you'll miss out on those statistics and Google won't know if your content is good or not, because if you got 1,000 visitors on your content, then without having indexed it in Google, it's basically as if nothing happened. So it's better to wait a little bit, like I said, 1 to 3 days in order to publish your content on social media with the call to action to keep sharing it, to keep getting eyeballs into your content so that it displays as a good ranking signal to Google. Digital PR or brand monitoring. You got to pay attention, I mentioned this earlier, to both positive and negative mentions of your brand and or content. We all know how things can go viral, but even so, it can be both positive and negative. I'm sure most of you saw when Donald Trump hired the Four Seasons landscape company instead of the Four Seasons Hotel. Well, to give you a little of an insight, the Four Seasons Landscape Company got a huge influx of visitors because nobody had ever heard of that company, obviously, until Donald Trump mentioned it, right? So this is the power that paying attention to what's going on with your brand has to do with monitoring it, right? You can do press releases to get your followers and readers ready for a big launch, anticipate your content, so on and so forth. Now, the most important part of off-page SEO are backlinks. This is considered to be, and has been mentioned by Google to be a known ranking factor out of the 200 backlinks or links. To give you a small or brief definition, basically backlinks are the links your website gets from external sources. For example, continuing on with the cupcake shop interview example, let's say travelblog.com did an outstanding interview for the cupcake shop, right? And let's say the New York Times got a whiff of it. They read the article, they loved it, and they wrote an article about sweets, for example, in their travel section. And they somehow linked to that cupcake shop interview. Well, New York Times being an authority in the news cycle and media, you're going to get a lot of eyeballs and good signals sent to Google because the New York Times linked to your website and that particular content on your website. One thing I want to highlight is Google doesn't necessarily rank your entire website overall. Google does rank your individual pages, and based on each individual page's rank, that's the ranking that your website receives. So it's something to keep in mind whenever you're creating content. Make sure you address your audience's intent, whether it's a question like how much does a cheetah run, or what are the best cupcakes in Puerto Rico, cupcake shops in Puerto Rico. Make your content linkable. And finally, how do you do this, right? Well, outreach. You have to build relationships. You have to reach out to journalists, experts, news publications, anyone that you can think of that is relevant to the content that you're trying to share. If you don't, you're not going to have too much success, right? Who wants to reach out to a finance expert about a cupcake shop interview? Well, maybe you might be in luck and that financial expert loves cupcakes. Well, that's a 1 in a million, right? But you're better off trying to contact someone that does know about cupcakes, or even is a cupcake review website. Who knows? But you have to do the research and find relevant people that will want to not just build a relationship with you, but also share your content as well. Remember, I keep saying this, content is king, and you have to keep that on top of mind whenever you're building your content. Now, how do you do this, right? This seems all super complicated. It's a lot of information, and you're like, how do I start? Like, how do I know which keywords are the keywords that my audience is searching for? How do I know that this particular content ranks well versus this particular content, et cetera, et cetera? Here are some SEO tools that will definitely help out. My personal favorite, and disclaimer, this is not sponsored whatsoever. This is just my personal opinion because I use it on a daily basis, but it's called Ahrefs. There's a lot of ways you can mention this, right? Everybody in the SEO industry, it's an inside joke. Mention it Ahrefs or Ahrefs, however you want to mention it. But as they clearly state in their homepage, with Ahrefs, you don't have to be an SEO pro to rank higher and get more traffic. Now, I will say this is not the most cost-effective SEO tool out there, but in my personal opinion, it's the best overall SEO tool ever. If you want to try it out, there's a 7-day trial for $7. It's only $7. That's worth the cost of a beer, McDonald's drive-through, etc. You could spend $7 and spend those entire 7 days exploring it and making sure that it's the right tool for you. If that doesn't grab your attention, you can use another great tool, which is Moz. Moz.com, who is known for its famous founder, Rand Fishkin, is known for its Chrome extension. Moz's Chrome extension can give you greater insights and details on whichever website you visit, right? Let's keep going with the cupcake shop example. If you visit that web page with Moz's Chrome extension, Moz will detail you information on the keywords that were used, on the ranking of that page, how to improve that particular web page. Even though you're not the owner, it will still give you some tips. And also, it'll still bring you back to its blog, where it'll take you directly to the particular blog post that you need to know in order to either improve your content or whatever suggestion that the Monster Chrome extension is giving you. So, but it's not free. It is a bit cheaper than Ahrefs, but I'd still recommend it because it's a great tool. Now, the best tool for people that are starting out in SEO or dabble into SEO is Ubersuggest. This is a tool built by another SEO guru called Neil Patel. Don't worry, I have all these sources at the end of this presentation. So if any of you want to have a copy of it, I'll be sure to send it over through email. But basically, Ubersuggest is a easy to use and way cheaper than other SEO tools. And as a good way for adding, more value to you, they offer twice a month free consultations, either from Neil himself or his team. If you get Neil himself, let me know. I've always wanted to do that, and I still haven't gotten Neil to give me some free consultation. Now, next two tools I'm going to be mentioning are great tools for keyword research. One of those tools is Google Trends. You have to know Google Trends if you're trying to get into SEO. Google Trends gives you insights into what's a breakout keyword, meaning that it's gaining over 300% interest from search engines, or in particular case, Google. What are some uprising trending topics? You can even compare different keywords if you're trying to use synonyms, for example, trying to find out which word can resonate with your audience. So definitely try and give Google Trends a try. And the best part of all, it's free. And then finally, we got Answer the Public. So Answer the Public is I would say an autocomplete, or one of the most complete free sources for finding keyword suggestions. Basically, it's a great way to get the what, how, when, and why of any keyword. So it's basically a gold mine for consumers who want to get an insight and a fresh look for their content. Now, this is all great, right? You're wondering, well, this is amazing, but how exactly does all this information help my business? You could be an entrepreneur, you can be a freelancer, you have to ask yourself a lot of questions. Well, hopefully with these 5 impacts, I'll be answering them. Number 1 would be you get more visibility. With more visibility, you get more traffic. When you get more traffic, you get more prospects. More prospects means possibilities of more sales. When you get more sales, you know where this is going, you get more money. And eventually you can obviously surpass your competitors, keep investing in your SEO efforts, and eventually become an authority in your industry, which is what people in the SEO who do SEO strive for. Next, it builds credibility and trust with your audience. You have to make sure that the content that you write answers and provides them value. If it doesn't, they're just going to exit your website and they're probably not going to visit you again. As you can tell, this is becoming a little bit repetitive by now, but this is the great part, right? Everything in SEO is connected, and you have to pay close attention to what each and every part of the SEO world does in order to understand whether you can have a successful SEO strategy. Next, we have better user experience. Like I mentioned earlier, if you make your content easily readable, not just to users, but also to search bots for Google, you avoid visitors leaving early. Remember, 3 seconds is all it takes. So keep that in mind. Also, longer sessions, meaning that longer people stay on a particular page on your website, it's a good signal to Google, which could mean an increase in your rankings. Now, the best part of all is SEO compared to traditional marketing efforts such as billboard ads, even pay-per-click, is relatively cheap, which is what is attractive about it. Now, one thing I want to emphasize is there is no shortcut to ranking. There is no shortcut to increasing your rankings, right? SEO is a long-term strategy. SEO is basically misunderstood by a lot of people. After hiring an expert, most get discouraged because they come back to their expert asking after 2 months, which is a short time. SEO usually is 3 to 6 months for it to actually show results. That whatever they're doing, it's not working, and they want to hire someone else, probably an agency who is much more expensive and has a lot more bureaucracy and a lot more steps to, work one-on-one with you. So I would recommend you, if you're trying to get into SEO, or if you're trying to hire someone with SEO, that you read about it a little bit. You ask a lot of questions to your SEO expert. Make sure that they are able to answer it in a clear way that you can understand what it is that they're going to do and the goals and objectives that you're trying to accomplish for your business. Remember, transparency is the key to having a great success, to have a great SEO consultant. Which brings me to the final impact, obviously, great ROI, return on investment. I put there a gear with kind of like the infinite loop, or somewhat of a flywheel, if you will, mainly because once your SEO takes off, your content is amazing, it starts spreading like wildfire, people start talking about it on the web, either social media or sending it through email to colleagues or friends and family, it's gonna keep going, right? This happens, and you can do this when you check out one of the SEO tools. You can definitely input one of the biggest websites, or you can use any website of your preference, and see the upward trend that those websites had ever since they started until where they are right now. Meaning, it takes a little bit of time for success, but anything that's worth doing definitely is an investment in time. Now, here are some SEO trends for 2021. SEO scalability. No one has done this. No one has found a way to not do the manual work of SEO, right? Obviously, an agency can hire 100 SEO professionals, but it's still manual work. If you can find a way to scale your SEO efforts, you're basically going to be the king of the internet, because literally you will run the internet for your industry. Which brings me to the second trend, more automation. Again, it's a lot of manual work, but if you find a way to automate your SEO efforts, you'll start winning the internet. Now, I advise not to do this in a spammy way, obviously, because when you're trying to do this in a spammy way, excuse me for the repetition, Google's going to notice that, and you're going to get deranked, which can hurt you in the long run. All SEO is mobile SEO. As I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, Google switched, or is given priority in 2021 to websites that have mobile first indexing. So make sure you have mobile first indexing on your website. This also includes tablets, by the way. Focus on user and search intent. Self-explanatory, right? And finally, customer analytics, retention, and lifetime value. You obviously, as a business owner or freelancer, etc., want to know what keeps your customers or your traffic coming back. Is it your images? Is it your content, meaning your explanations? Is it your page title? Is it the way that you wrote about something? Is it a feature within your content? These are all questions you have to ask yourself when you have the data to do it, which is the customer analytics. And obviously, you have to find out, what is the lifetime value of this customer? How can I provide them more value while also getting value back in the words of business owner, meaning more money? And finally, as an extra slide, I put some statistics that I found very interesting for you guys to know about. So 68% of online experiences begin with search engines. 52.2% of all website traffic worldwide comes from mobile devices. But since we're in the US, 95% of all organic traffic on Google in the US comes from mobile. Very important to keep in mind. 76% of people who search on their smartphones for something nearby visit a business within a day. This is more for local SEO, which is another component of SEO. I didn't want to talk about it too much, since I don't know who's doing local SEO, who's doing international, who's more of a regional, bigger regional area. But local SEO is definitely something to keep in mind. As you can see, 76% of people visit a business after having searched it on their smartphones within a day. And then finally, my personal favorite, SEO drives 1,000% more traffic than organic social media. Now, I know a lot of people tend to feel intimidated by to build a website and obviously maintain it, et cetera, et cetera. And then they transition to social media. There's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, social media is free. There's a lot of people on social media, and your content can go viral very easily if you do the right things. But you're missing out on a lot of potential prospects and a lot of potential revenue by just sticking to social media. Again, it's not bad, and I'm not bashing at all to anyone who has a social business solely on social media, but I'd advise that they start thinking about how they can build a website for their social media profiles to drive that traffic from their pages to their website, to then have their customers go through their buying funnel for a better rate of return. That was a mouthful, so I'll probably shut up now and take your questions if anybody has some. No biggie. I know it's a lot of information. I've been here before. No biggie. You can definitely keep in touch with me. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'll start tweeting about helpful tips and tricks for SEO and social media SEO as well. It's also a great way to, keep in touch and for easier engagement with me as well. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Professional network and networking is important. And finally, if you have any questions that you wrote down, or you want to know more about SEO, please feel free to email me at gmerced94@gmail.com. I'll also be more than happy to send over this presentation along with the sources of the data behind this presentation. So thank you so much for attending. It really means a lot. And I think Joel will have some final words.
I just wanna share something real quick with you guys. So yeah, I can definitely vouch for the importance of having SEO and optimizing your site for SEO versus focusing on social media. A lot of the traffic that we currently drive through Homebase is through social media, but it tends to be pretty ephemeral. Once you make those posts, unless you're constantly posting, you're gonna lose that traffic. But it is the long form content that gives us the most consistent traffic with the least amount of work. It's the most work in the beginning, but you get the most bang for your buck over the long time. So yeah, I can definitely vouch for everything that Giancarlos has shared with you guys today. So yeah, it's definitely cool, and it's definitely important. And with that, I'll leave you guys with Joel.
Yeah, excuse me. That was excellent. Great content, stuff I didn't even know. So I thank you again for putting that together. We're going to be sure to share that with all the participants, the full presentation. And like I said, we'll be bringing Giancarlos back for some deeper dives in the future. So stay tuned to everything we got going on. Be sure to check nprchamber.org, register for our part 2 of this web series that's going to be next Thursday, I believe is the 21st. And yeah, besides that, I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
The question was, I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, he said he was going to touch base on what are the factors for the site speed. I don't think I remember him saying anything about that.
Yeah. So one of the factors for site speed, you have to think of it as an individual. Like I mentioned, the Google ranking factors tend to cater or tend to rank your website based on each individual page. So you got to make sure that your individual pages have a quick site speed loading time, right? You can do this several ways. I mentioned the decreasing or compressing your image files, right? If you have a file that's a JPEG or in RAW format that you uploaded to your web page, that can be a factor that can slow down your speed. Also, if you, for example, if you use a CMS or content management system like WordPress, and you have a lot of plugins tend to be another reason why websites tend to slow down. You got to make sure before you download and install and activate any plugin for your website to understand what's the how heavy it is, right? How can really help you? How does this plugin benefit you other than obviously being heavy. You can definitely have heavy plugins on your site. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But you have to keep in mind that you can't have too many heavy plugins, because then when everything is activated and trying to do their features or what they're built for, it can definitely slow down your page. Another thing that can increase your website speed is definitely your theme. If you select a theme that is pretty heavy, that will definitely slow down your website. You can find this out before purchasing or downloading any theme on the theme description for any service that is offering themes as a product. Make sure that you look for page speed or loading times as some of the keywords that these creators of these themes use, to make sure that the people who use those themes can be confident that their site won't be slowed down as well. Another thing that can definitely slow down your site speed is your URL structure. Remember, you don't have to necessarily only pay attention to your traffic. You also have to pay attention to Google's bots, spiders, crawlers, however you want to call them. But if you have a URL that is a bunch of words, numbers that don't make any sense at all, or don't give you any details on what the particular content of that specific web page is about, it'll take them a little bit to identify the type of content and the category where they would index that particular content on their database. Instead, select the keyword that you used in your content to in your URL structure. So keep that in mind whenever you're building your URL in your content. I hope that answered your questions. I don't know if if that was
it did. It did. After you reiterated it, I understand that you did explain some of this stuff. I have one last question. Yeah. In regards to the mobile first index, I currently have, although it's dormant right now, I have a platform with Etsy. You're probably familiar with Etsy, right? Yeah. Okay. So I'm assuming, or maybe I shouldn't assume, they are mobile. Do they have like mobile first index? Like they cater to that, right?
They should, but this is where the technical aspect of SEO comes in. You're better off either contacting Etsy's customer support or their technical department and ask them directly that question. From personal experience and other people I've worked with regarding this mobile first indexing, Etsy is either a hit or miss. It all depends on how much content you have on your account. If your content is is image heavy, it can probably not be mobile first indexed, mainly because the entire quote unquote power of the website itself is gonna move towards downloading these images, which is more friendly to laptop devices than mobile devices. Even though, having said that, mobile devices tend to be somewhat quote unquote quicker than some laptops, right? They are the ones that have the 5G technology that's starting to roll out. But I definitely suggest you contact Etsy's technical department if you can, to get a clearer picture on mobile first indexing for your Etsy shop. Okay.
One other thing, I'm sorry, I keep on thinking of things.
No, keep going.
So going back to Etsy, right? So is it safe to assume like they have an app and everything I do is on my mobile app? They have it for the seller, they have it for the buyer. So this seminar has been very helpful and very informative. I'm just trying to understand, is it safe to assume, i.e. Etsy, because they have these app versions of shopping for you to take care of the back end of your business, would that be considered mobile first indexing, or is that just something totally different?
I'd say it's totally different, and the reason being is that not necessarily has to do with Etsy, but in general, anybody can create a mobile application for their business, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're mobile first indexed. That has to do more with the actual website itself rather than the mobile application.
I guess for me, I just need to educate myself more on mobile first indexing because I'm totally clueless about it. I was just asking these questions, just trying to make a connection. So this has been helpful. I just need to educate myself more on what that actual is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. Also keep in mind that there's also like SEO for specific apps. So for example, there's also SEO optimization for Etsy, for example. So that's something you might also want to look into as well. Seeing how to optimize listings on your Etsy shop so that you can be searched through their Etsy, so that people can find you through the Etsy search. So that's just one thing to keep in mind as well. There's like the overall SEO topic, and then there's more specific types of SEO within each of the different platforms. So I just wanted to add to that as well.
Yep.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everything. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us.
All right, so we'll go ahead and close this out, in the interest of time. But again, all Giancarlos's info is there. So if you have any additional questions for him, go ahead and connect with them. And yeah, so have a great day, everyone.